Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Phillips here with the Prince George Daily News with our panel. We were off for a little bit over the holidays, but I'm joined by Mackenzie Kerr, Todd Corrigall, and Chuck Nisbett. We all took holidays, and I'm pretty sure that all of us stayed in town. I know my furthest foray was probably to Starbucks. That's about as far as I went over the holidays. But a lot of our politicians and some senior bureaucrats in some governments decided to jet off to different locales around the world amidst the pandemic and us being urged not to travel. Thoughts? Let's start with Todd.
Terrible. I don't know how best to say this. It's always shocking, particularly in these, as we watch what's unfolding in the US right now, these political volatile times where, every little bit is under scrutiny and everything you do is being monitored and watched. Why take an unnecessary step when you're asking your constituents and your fellow residents to take the steps of isolating or staying with their close families or within their households? Why do you feel like you are somehow above it? And how do you dictate that a house issue in your home in Arizona required your immediate attention over Christmas and New Year's? Which, as I pointed out the other day, is a little more troubling. I mean, it's problematic to tell somebody how they can spend their money, but a politician who's earning tax dollars and investing in foreign property with that money is a little bit troubling to me. I would rather see our tax dollars returned back into our system, but that's just not the case right now. And what it used to be, you did what was right because it was the right thing to do. And now it feels like we're starting to see how many people may not necessarily be in it for the right reasons.
Absolutely. I flabbergasted. You can expect, one or two here and there to, to have a lapse in judgment and do this. But it seems like it's almost use a poor phrase, a pandemic or an epidemic amongst politicians. Mackenzie, what's your thoughts on this?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. I wasn't surprised that some of the Alberta MLAs traveled. Honestly, disappointed, but not surprised. I feel like that's just the motto or phrase that we can use when a lot of things regarding Alberta or even the States right now. But then we started seeing people like Nikki Ashton from the federal NDP. And then we saw Sharmaki, who is a city councillor in Victoria, who I'm a huge supporter of. He's extremely progressive and left-leaning and green. I'm not sure if he identifies with the party, but he's very, very left-leaning. And then I started to think, he went to Africa to see his family in Somalia. He hasn't seen them since '92, since the Civil War. And then another city councillor on the island also traveled to Las Vegas for a wedding. And so I think that there's differences in the context, but they're all unacceptable. But I think that we are looking at them with all the same lens and saying every single person, a lot of people are saying every single person should resign. And that's where I think that there is a debate. But I think that no matter what, it's disappointing. We should hold our politicians to a higher standard, and the entitlement absolutely shocks me. The person that wrote the article about Sharmaki and the other city councillor, who I don't know their name, said that they interviewed 80 city councillors on the island, and those were the only 2. So it is promising to see that, there's not that many in BC, but if we look at Alberta, there's quite a few. So I think that we need to have a real conversation about what our politicians are here to do for us. And if they're telling us, hey, stay home, and they're making TV news ads like in Alberta with Jason Kenney and that one lady saying, stay at home and do these staycations, and then those are the people literally leaving the country, it's quite ironic. And I definitely think that those people should resign. But I think it is up to some debate, I think, when there's family deaths and things like that. Nikki Ashton went to Greece, I believe, for a sick family member that was on their deathbed, I believe. So I think that there's some, conversation around what happens after, but still disappointment regardless.
Yeah, absolutely.
Death is a challenging one, though. And I think, I lost my father-in-law in November, and we couldn't have a funeral because of the rules. So what endeavors an elected official to fly to Greece to attend a family funeral, but right here at home, we can't have 20 people gather to honor our father-in-law, or my wife's father. It's a slippery slope, right? This is the challenging part: is what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, how do we gauge it? But I think that comes down to us setting our expectations of our elected officials too, going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. With Nikki Ashton and I think there was another one that went down to Seattle to visit some sick relatives. You can sympathize with what they want to do, but on the other hand, like you say, we've got people here that can't go 2 blocks down to the hospital to see people who are also sick and dying. So what gives these people the right? Chuck, you want to weigh in here on your thoughts? And
yeah, I was looking at a bunch of different stories on the politicians that have been involved in this travel, inadvised travel, and there's a wide range. I mean, the home in Palm Springs. Okay, come on, phone down, hire somebody, get them to look after it, right? I don't see that as important enough to break isolation, COVID isolation, and especially traveling to another country to do it. But again, with Nikki Ashton and her grandmother being sick, you can kind of see it. I mean, you can feel it, right? But as Todd says, we haven't been able to attend funerals here. We haven't been able to go see people that are ailing here. I think, as a lot of you know, my wife works at a Jubilee Lodge, and people aren't getting in to see their loved ones that are sick there. No one's coming to see anybody. They're being kept away, and that's just the way it has to be. And I think we look to our politicians to stand up and be counted and show the right example to everybody else. So if they can't follow the rules, I'm sure there should be some problem, some resignation to it, some finish. They can't just get away with it all the time. I don't see that as the Canadian way. It just seems very wrong. It doesn't seem right for the other 34 odd million people in the country,
Mackenzie, I just think you wanted to say something there, but I just wanted to throw in here. Jamie Willis says she agrees with you on what you said earlier. So, and we have a question from Myrna Scarf Davidson asking if Jason Kenney left the country, and I don't know, but I don't think he did. But anyways,
I think he did either. I think it's just, I was putting my thoughts into words as Chuck was talking. I think it's just that we sympathize more with them when there's a reason that pulls at our heartstrings. I think that's the only difference, is when it comes to Nikki Ashton and Sharmaki, who hasn't seen them since '92 in Somalia. Those are we're just more empathetic and more sympathetic towards those issues than people like that other city councillor on Vancouver Island who did an interview after and said, well, I'm not the one setting the health code, and I didn't personally tell anyone not to leave the country, and so I shouldn't be responsible for this, so I'm allowed to do whatever I want because it's not illegal. I can still leave the country, and I followed the protocol, and I'm not setting the precedent by telling people not to leave the country. She literally said that. So, or he, I'm not sure. But those are the people that have the wrong attitude about it that should have to resign. Whereas people like, you know, they're not in it for the right reasons, and they're literally using excuses saying, well, I didn't specifically say the words, no one else should leave the country, so I'm off the hook. You know, that's not acceptable. Whereas Sharmaki put out an apology, and you know, Nikki Ashton, I believe, as well. And if they have committee positions, or if they're chairs of committees, things like that in Alberta, they were losing those positions because they're getting paid extra for those committee positions. So then they are losing something. So yeah, I think it's up for discussion of what they lose. Do they have to resign completely, every single person, regardless of reason, or, you know, only people that are acting with entitlement and don't show any remorse? That, I think that's kind of what is up for thoughts.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the reaction from various different governments have been, and you know, I'll give credit to Jagmeet Singh of the NDP. It's the only one that, when he found out that one of his people had done this, acted immediately and unequivocally. Said that he stripped her right away of her portfolio or critics roles, and all the other ones waffled. And it wasn't until public outcry, especially Jason Kenney in Alberta, that he finally did something, because he first said he wasn't going to do anything. Todd, I guess one of the questions here is that, does this erode, or how does this erode even further people's perception of politicians and political leaders?
I think any amount of rhetoric you want to find on one side or the other is available to you online. You can always track that down. I think the problem that's facing politicians right now is there's hyper scrutiny, more so now than ever before. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But what that means is every decision, every outcome, every statement is going to be scrutinized by all people. So if you're standing, and Mackenzie said it really well, you know, there's all these statements from, it was the tourism minister, or housing minister, whomever it was, who was saying, you know, stay at home, let's not do this, and then took off to Mexico for the holidays. So that's very, very problematic. So I think what people need to appreciate is we are electing people to lead, and leadership requires challenging decisions, sometimes challenging decisions that are great, and sometimes challenging decisions that are not so great. And while the rest of us sit here and adjust the realities of our lives, and I'll use our members as an example, businesses have been burdened substantially by the pandemic. Loss of revenue, loss of clients, scaled back workforces, scaled back hours. How is it just then that an elected official arbitrarily gets to travel for non-specific reasons or non-emergency purposes, while our economy suffers, while small businesses suffer? And so that scrutiny should be leveled, but it has to be leveled tactically. There has to be a dialogue about what our expectations are of our elected officials. And that scrutiny that I mentioned off the top that's increased recently is a great thing, because we now have an ability to directly or more directly connect with elected officials or those that are seeking elected office, asking them questions, spending time engaging in these discussions, and really determining at the core what their beliefs are and who they are as a person, because that's exactly what they're going to transfer over to that role.
Yeah, that's certainly a challenge. How do you do that in the ballot box, right? How do you get that you know, during election time? How do you make those judgments? That's pretty tough.
Well, is it not going to become more topically increased now, right? I mean, yeah. We've seen, we'll use Canada specifically, we've seen some tremendous leadership in our country through this process. We've seen partisanship drop in some areas, and we've seen great collaboration in other areas, and we've seen real leaders emerge. And then we've seen people who may not be up to the task, or we've seen people who are in over their head, or we've seen people who are afraid to make a decision because of any backlash from constituents when the decision may be necessary for the safety of your communities. So
I think maybe we should
next elections,
Yeah,
Right?
we should be asking different questions during debates. We should be asking the candidates about moral questions, about ethics and who they are, more so, I think, because then we would be able to see who is in front of us and which person we want. We could do it like an ethics exam with two, scenarios, and have the candidate try and answer the scenario according to what their morals are, because I think that would give us a sneak peek into what kind of person that is.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I was just going to
I might regret this now, but
drafting up that psych exam for the next time Mackenzie runs. Yeah, but yeah, Chuck, that, and part of that I think probably falls on the media. And you worked for many years as a photojournalist, and I know I worked as a newspaper editor, and I think that is part of the problem that we talked about. Is election time, we draft up some questions. What's the most important issue on your thing? Oh, it's the economy, and all that kind of stuff. So how do we get the media to start delving into some of these more personality type issues?
Well, this might be the start of it. I mean, in the past, as you know, every time there's an election coming up, you get an election editorial board get together, and everyone kind of looks at the issues of the day, and that's where you focus your coverage, right? And your questions. But I think maybe now people need to start thinking about the ethical questions and the moralistic side of things, and start basing their questioning and their coverage a little bit more that way. Maybe let's try and find a little bit more about the personality of the person, rather than the, what do you think about spending $1 million here or $1 billion there? I think you could see some changes after this. I mean, it's going to have ongoing ramifications, definitely, right? A lot is going to change after COVID, or who knows, COVID may still be around the next election. You don't know. But I think it's going to make people think a lot differently. And that might be part of it, is this, let's look at who we're really putting in charge. And I hate to bring him up again, but it's not just these people, it's Trump. He's got to make people start thinking about who is really ask, I don't think anyone ever envisioned Trump's presidency to go the way it did. And I think it's going to make a lot of editorial boards look at politicians differently too.
Chuck, you sound like you're ready for the 2021 federal election.
I am. Let's go.
Heard it here first. Breaking news.
I think that everything that we're seeing right now has just helped a lot of people understand how politics affects their life, because a lot of people were just not interested in politics. I think that a lot of people, even my age, I think having two young candidates in the last election was super helpful to get young people to pay attention to politics in our riding. So that was a huge upside. And I think even now more, because of everything that's been going on everywhere. And people are wanting to go and visit their family, and then they're saying, well, who the heck is making up this rule that I'm not allowed to go and do these things? Oh, it's politicians. So they're finally feeling a direct impact by our political decisions, and realizing which people they don't like and which they do, and their views, because a lot of the time people just don't care about politics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It is excuse me. It is kind of tough, but Todd, one of the things I guess is that I think we see this down the States more so than up here, and Chuck had talked about Trump, but we do see it up here, and it's the one thing that Trump has brought out is the fact that a lot of people in the US, and we're seeing it up here, don't feel that who or what they see in government represents them. And I think this is maybe part of that, where, I know a lot of people when they say, well, we're going to go to Greece. Well, geez, we got to plan for 2 years to go to Greece. So a lot of these problems that these people are facing, the MLAs are, these are people who are making $150,000 a year or more for some of them. So how does that relate to, and they're thinking they're just ordinary people when really they're not. So how do you get people who understand ordinary world, the real world, I guess it is, into government?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, Bill.
Saved the best for you.
What's that?
I saved the best ones for you. So.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. Hyperpartisanship is not new. Trump has certainly boiled that up and really sort of found the power and the anger behind the hyperpartisanship that's been seeping ever so quickly into our political systems. And it's challenging, if we looked at the difference between a business and a government, and you talk to anyone in government, they would always tell you if we were a business, we'd be out of business because we're so mismanaged. And that's problematic. And there's a lot of cases where bureaucrats earn more than politicians, and that's somewhere where you have to sort of raise the question mark, because you're electing people to lead, yet the people that are supposed to be executing their leadership vision are grossly out earning them in some instances. So there's some questions that should be brought up around that. But what do you do to tamp that down? I'm not sure that there's much that you can do about it, but I think the parties have become so partisan, and that has led people to believe that a party doesn't necessarily speak for them, because if I don't buy into the 100 pieces in their platform, then I'm not a part of that party, but I believe in pieces from this and pieces from that. So as an electorate, it's incumbent upon us to have these discussions with our elected officials, particularly the ones that can invoke change right now, so that there's a greater understanding of what we want our future political systems to look like. Because as Canadians, we don't vote people in, we vote people out. It seems to be the moniker. And I think that's true to some extent, but I think there's also cases where we can look across the country and say that someone has been voted in. And when we say, an MLA makes 150 or 120, and then there's some perks, to Mackenzie's point, if they're on a committee, if they're a chair, if they're a parliamentary secretary, anything along those lines, there's always the additional stipends that go along with it. And they're grossly out earning some people. I think what we have to remember is they're committing their entire life to this job. Shirley is not going to the grocery store hassle-free. Shirley is not putting gas in her car hassle-free. You are committing quite a bit of time to it. And it's not that they're out earning their counterparts. It's that maybe there's not a good enough job communicating all the work that's going into it, and having a better accountability matrix that goes into this, where we don't just say we're re-electing because we feel like we need to re-elect the individual. They need to do a much better job of communicating their individual platforms, why they stand for those beliefs, and how they're going to fight for those on behalf of their constituents.
Yeah, and we circle around again to electoral reform. I'll go to Mackenzie, because I know you're a big proponent of electoral reform. Is that one way to hopefully try to address some of this? Because you get a broader sense of, or viewpoints of people in the room when decisions are being made.
You do, yeah, and proportional representation leads to more minority governments, and then you get more points of view at the table, which is good. So a lot of people, that don't agree with PR don't actually have the facts of what PR is. It's just a lack of communication and education on what it is. So I think it's not a silver bullet. PR won't fix everything, though. I think we also need to do more individual action of talking around our kitchen tables about politics more, about, just talking about it, because right now a lot of people tend to avoid the subject, especially when we have things that are going on south of us in the border. Just people don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but we have to, because it affects our everyday lives. So I think that the more we can do it on an individual level, and then we can also get out and vote for a different voting system if that ever comes up again, which who knows? I mean, I don't know when that's going to come up again, because people also don't like talking about PR. They're tired of it now because we've had so many referendums. So I think it's going to take electing more Greens and NDP who both want PR. And I think that once we get that many people elected, then we can change it. But, you know, until then, we're not going to see the Liberals or the Conservatives propose a PR system. So we kind of have to do it ourselves and talk about how important it is that we change this political landscape, this divisive politics that is in front of us, because we're not getting anywhere. You know, we need to change the way that we have discourse with people that we disagree with so that we can find common ground, because right now we look to the South and see what happens when we don't do that.
Yeah, and if people aren't aware, at the South there's a security breach at the Capitol right now going on at this time, and there's apparently an armed standoff inside the Capitol. So that's what's going on down south, in case you're wondering. So Chuck, what are your thoughts on proportional representation, or some other way to make governments more accountable and get more viewpoints into government?
Well, the proportional representation, I think, is a very good idea. I think it makes a lot of sense. But I think more than anything, we need to try and find a way around the party system. The hyper party mind is detrimental to any kind of progress, really. It just kind of stalls the whole political wagon on a set party platform. And the worse it gets, as we're seeing down in the States today, even with this thing that's happening in the Capitol there, it becomes more and more, well, it just reminds me more and more of how Nazism grew and Hitler came to power, you know, just inciting that party rhetoric and getting it going and getting more and more people behind that whole party idea without actually looking at what the party is doing and not really analyzing the thoughts behind it, just following the party line blindly. And I think we need to get away from that completely. And let's start electing people. You know, I think that's what really makes sense. Let's get the people we want looking after our country, not the party. Let's get the people in there. And to tell you the truth, I don't really know how we go about that. But I think it's really important that we do it. I think it's important that we find a way to get the people that really can make a difference working to make a difference without labeling them as Green or NDP or Liberal or Conservative. Let's just get them in as politicians and people who can help us out. I think that's the way to go forward. And let's try and avoid all the party rhetoric. Oop. And we got music.
All right.
There we go. Someone doesn't like my way of thinking.
Well, that's all right. I have to apologize. My phone rang. I didn't put it on mute. So
yeah.
And whoever only was watching, I apologize for hanging up on you. So. Todd, any thoughts on proportional representation? One of the downsides, of course, is minority governments sometimes don't get things done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious downside to it. I think, you know, Mackenzie said she's not sure when we're going to see this happen again. It's going to be a long time. I mean, BC is now a case study in failed referendums on different electoral systems that I think will be in political textbooks for over a century, because I believe that's three failed attempts. Yeah. You know, I think there's always positive sides to anything. I think what we witnessed here most recently was a government that didn't want to see it happen, but it was part of their power sharing agreement. So they brought forward a flimsy, weak attempt at having a real dialogue around it, which was, you know, further witnessed by former party allies of theirs campaigning against what they had proposed. So I think what needs to happen is a plan needs to be developed, a process needs to be developed, how that would look, how that would shape with all the fun little colors and diagrams that show you who would have been your elected representative had this system been put in place, and then ask the question. These haphazard approaches of, well, there's 3 different systems, or there's 2 systems, or this could happen in this instance, or that could happen in that instance. That's all political theater. That's created for the intent purpose of not having it move forward. So if there's true, genuine interest in doing this, it's incumbent on the electorate, again, to speak to their elected representatives and say, what is the platform that best fits the mold of our country and the country that we want to see, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and have that get presented back as part of a real discussion.
So Dorothy Friesen just commented that we should watch Borgen on Netflix, because that is apparently a show that examines how governments work. So, and just as an aside, when I was in Williams Lake, when the first STV referendum went, and I ran a ballot in the paper at the time with politicians who were actually running or going to run, and got people to send in their ballots to the paper, and then I compared them to the election results later on, and we would have sent the same people. So it's just interesting. STV, for me personally, I think was a well thought out system, but it was complicated, and that's what just scared people off. It's like, as soon as you start talking about it, well, you take this one, you carry the 3, you multiply by pi, and then it's kind of like, oh, I just want to mark an X and that's it. So
the new math.
yeah, it was very complicated to work on, which was too bad, because I think it was a good system. But let's move on to the topic of the day, or whatever, or the topic of the year so far, and of course is COVID and the vaccine rollouts. One of the issues this morning, Mackenzie highlighted it, so I'll go with Mackenzie first, is vaccines are going to be sent out, or let's put it, prisoners are going to be one of the priority people to get vaccinated. And that has some people upset, other people aren't too upset. Mackenzie, your thoughts on waiting in line behind someone who's sitting in jail to get your COVID? Although you're the youngest one here, so you'll be waiting behind.
I'll be dead last, but that's fine. I think that it's a kind of a unfair comparison to say that, how do I feel about standing behind in line? Because it's 600 people that are getting it, if in the news article, inmates, because they're elderly or sick. It's not every single person in prison. So I think that we need to really look at the facts here, because it's going straight to people's heartstrings, and they're getting very, very emotional about it. And really, it's just about human rights. These people are still humans. They still have human rights. Just because they have committed a crime and they're in prison does not mean that they don't get health care. And they're in probably one of the highest risk, of course, with long-term care homes and everything. But these are very, very high risk places for COVID to spread. And we have had outbreaks in prisons, and already in Canada, which I made a video on it, and I misspoke and said if we have one, but we already have had one. We already have had some. So if we had any more, we would be so overwhelmed in the healthcare system, because there's such a high spread possibility in prison systems. I think that if 600 people, are getting these across Canada, this is not just, in one prison or anything like that. This is a couple hundred human beings that deserve healthcare as well. We're not in the States. We don't have the death penalty. These people still get healthcare. And, it's disproportionately affected in the prison system by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. These people are already steps behind because of the systems that we have in place in Canada, and the systemic racism. It's 600 people, and people are absolutely going ballistic over this, saying, well, how dare they should be dead last. Well, I mean, you can go move to a state that has the death penalty then, because that's not Canada. Everyone deserves human rights in this country. And, it's not every single person ahead of you. That's not what this is. They're not, Aaron O'Toole completely lied in his tweet by saying that they're ahead of healthcare workers. We've already had 150,000 people vaccinated in this country, and most of them were healthcare workers first. So that he's just feeding into that negative, divisive rhetoric to help his base, increase this divisiveness. And it makes me very, very angry. So I made a post about it, and now people are, talking about it. And I think that we need to look at the facts and not get overwhelmed by it, and have discussions with people that are misinformed, because a lot of them just read the tweet and say, oh my gosh, how dare the prisoners get it before healthcare workers and vulnerable people? Well, first of all, the first part of that, they're not getting it before healthcare workers, and they are vulnerable people. So those are my thoughts.
Excellent. Chuck, any follow-up thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got to agree with Mackenzie in a lot of ways there. I mean, these are people who are at risk, who are definitely in the higher risk percentages of the population, even though they are in prison. And the argument a lot of people are making is that they're isolated in prison, but people coming into a prison situation haven't been observed to be isolating or anything for the 2 weeks beforehand. So there's no way of knowing what's coming in. So, and with the population density in a building like that, it just makes sense that the people that are more at risk in those situations are given the vaccine. And, I don't mind waiting to get my vaccine, because 600 people across the country are going to get theirs first. It's not that big a deal. People don't need to freak out because 600 doses are going different, going ahead of you. And I think we will find that it makes no difference at all in the long run. There are other issues with the vaccine that I have, that I think lots of people have. My biggest one is allergy. I know with the Pfizer vaccine that it contains glycol, which I am really allergic to. I cannot use a vape pen or anything like that, because I instantly get sick right away. And I'm not sure about the second vaccine, if that has glycol in it or not, but those are much more things that I think about. How many people are affected by allergy to glycol and stuff like that? I mean, it's definitely taken down a lot of people around the world. I've been looking at news stories from Europe, England especially, and there's been quite a few allergic reactions to the Pfizer vaccine. So I think those are more important things to worry about than the 600 people that get it before you. Are you suitable to get it? Is it suitable for pregnant people? They've been looking at that. There was no testing done on pregnant women.
Yeah.
And nobody knows for sure how it would affect anything. So these are things that I think are much more important than worrying where you are in the lineup.
Todd, what are your thoughts on vaccinating prisoners and what Chuck was talking about there with possible allergic reactions? Yeah, there's certainly been a few. I don't know that anybody's died from the allergic reactions though. So.
Yeah, on the first point, I mean, I'm not going to argue who should get a vaccine, who shouldn't get a vaccine, what a rollout looks like. My question would be, why are inmates at a higher risk than school teachers, who are also in a confined space with many people, with poor air circulation, with recycled air? That's the question in my mind, is how are we categorizing this going forward? And how are we saying teachers are mandatory, schools need to be open, students need to be in place, but teachers seem to be continuously falling down a rapidly growing list of those who are going to be vaccinated ahead. So again, I'm not arguing, inmates over anybody else. What I'm saying is I've got a lot of questions about how these these rollouts are being designed, and who's deciding that, and what numbers are they using to factually say that's what needs to happen, or that's the timeline that needs to occur for the greatest level of safety. Are there more prison guards in BC or across Canada than there are teachers? 100% there are not. And the prison guards are going home every day, just like the teachers are going home every day. So if they're transporting something from one facility to another, it is the same case. And if we're talking about 600 inmates versus over 100,000 teachers and some untold number of students, the numbers to me would lean on a different side. But that's where I say I've got a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. On the vaccination side and allergies, I don't know enough about it to speak articulately. What I had heard was that even though the process moved more expeditiously than at any time in history, that's obviously a result of more people being involved, a greater sense of urgency from every country in the world, greater technological advancements. I would say they've probably put out a vaccine that is as safe as it would have been had it waited another 6, 12, 18, 24 months, who knows, to create. But certainly there are many cases of allergies and issues, and I don't think we fully know yet if there's any dramatic long-term implications, because the testing period wasn't long enough to know if there's any dramatic long-term implications of the vaccine. But again, technology has moved in such a way that I suspect they've been able to extrapolate out different points of data through these processes that tell them with some level of certainty that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. A prime example of why we get smart people to do some of these things, because these are very complicated issues and we have to trust some of them. So, but you talk about schools, and there's just last night, Zoe Melitis, who is a professor up at UNBC, was at the school board and called for the school district to implement a mandatory mask dictate for schools, I guess, make masks mandatory at local schools. Mackenzie, your thoughts on masks at schools? Should they be mandatory?
I do want to echo Todd and say that I don't think that, so teachers were just dropped off the secondary list of people that were getting vaccinated, and I don't really agree with that. But also, when we're looking at outbreak numbers in schools, I think that that's what we need to use to decide whether or not we're doing mask mandatory or teachers vaccinated first or things like that, because children do have a less likelihood of getting and dying from the COVID vaccine. I believe that is correct. I think, right?
Yeah.
So I think that also comes into effect, when it comes to comparing long-term care homes and schools. Obviously, we're going to go to long-term care homes first because the likelihood of death is much higher and infection rate, is much more deadly. I think there are a few children that have caught it, but overall, I think that's the data that they're looking at. When it comes to mandatory masks, I mean, it is a small inconvenience for a huge benefit, possibly, that could come to, if those children are seeing their grandparents, or if those children are going to multiple homes or anything like that. I think, there's some pretty cool masks out there right now. So I don't think that it's as big a deal as people are making it out to be. People are yelling about their rights when it comes to mandatory masks. We're seeing it all over, the world right now. People, I mean, in Dawson Creek, I believe it was, there was a assault in a Walmart because someone wouldn't wear one. I think things are just getting out of hand, and people need to look at the data and say, you know what, it's a very small inconvenience. I can get a cool mask that says whatever I wanted on there, and I can, wear it wherever I want. It's a short amount of time. I mean, for healthcare workers are having to wear it all the time in hospitals. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know how I feel about mandatory masks in schools, because the children moving it along is much less likely, and there's been no outbreaks that have caused deaths and things like that from schools, but as far as I know. But yeah, I know Zoe well, and I think that it's her child, I think she said in the news article, has been wearing one since September, and it's a small inconvenience. So I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah. Chuck, what are your thoughts on mandatory masks in schools? They are indoor public places.
Yep, they are. And, everybody is wearing masks everywhere. And why not get the kids used to wearing them now too? Because I'm not convinced that this is all going away after we reach the end of this pandemic. There may be situations where masks are still commonplace. And I think everyone needs to be comfortable wearing a mask and being able to function in a mask for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. I wear a mask 8 hours a day at work. My wife wears a mask up to 12 hours a day at work, and as well as much more PPE at the hospital. And I don't see why kids can't learn to wear them too. And as Mackenzie says, you can get the coolest mask. You can be Baby Yoda if you want to be. You can wear anything. So yeah, I think we should be encouraging it to be done. And I think they should bring that forward. I really do think that mandatory masks in school is a good idea. And the kids may not be as much at risk, but their teachers are. You've got teachers. I remember teachers that were in their 60s and ready to retire when I was in school. And that's a high-risk group, right? So maybe we should be encouraging them to look after their teachers as well.
But as far as I know, teachers can wear masks in school if they choose to. So I guess probably once again the onus is perhaps on ourselves if it's an issue to wear our own masks. Todd, any thoughts on schools other than teachers being left off, which I think we all agree on this one?
I have many thoughts on this. The first and most important is masks need to be mandatory in our schools. Mackenzie is right that there hasn't been a significant death rate or contraction rate amongst youth, but we have seen those cases that have occurred. I think what's currently going on in the UK should be a signal to everybody else that every influenza through history has had the ability to morph and change and adapt and become resilient to vaccine. And in some instances, like it has in the UK, get much more stronger and much more dangerous and then change what those infection numbers look like. So I struggle with not taking a very simple and remedial step now in the hopes of tamping down future issues in 4, 6, 12 months. It is a simple task. It is a simple bulk purchase for the Ministry of Education to have masks that are put on at the front door before you walk in and discarded on your way out, and then pick up a new one the next day on your way in. It's a very simple step. And I just struggle with, like you said off the top, Bill, it is an indoor public space. There are people who are going in there to work. There are people who are going in there to work in close proximity, who are adults, who are more than likely making the decision to wear a mask. I just struggle with why we don't keep the kids safe and thereby the staff safe too.
Right on. Well, we're getting close to time, but let's just go around the horn with everybody quick. Do you think we're going to have more lockdown measures or go into a stricter lockdown in the next a little while before we start coming out of this? Mackenzie, let's start with you.
I mean, if we look at the case numbers, I would say it's going in that direction. I have recently made a video about New Zealand and how I wish that I could be going to a concert right now because they locked down very strictly for 8 weeks and now it's all gone. And it is a smaller population and it's an island and it's much harder to do that here. But I feel like if we just take really strict measures for a short amount of time and give people an end date and say, you know what, if you lock down strictly and one person to the grocery store, get delivery if you can, everything closed down, the government can help businesses just so that they're not going to work and starting coffee and making food and then no one's coming to their business. They're just struggling by. I think that we could all be a lot better off because then we could enjoy our summer when it comes around. But I don't know. I think that that would be a better solution than this I was going to swear, half-assed measure that we're seeing right now. But yeah.
Chuck, stricter lockdown yet to come, you think?
Yes, I really think so. And I think it's necessary. We've kind of waffled here. We've had some lockdown measures and they were effective, but I think they were lifted way too early. And I think we need to bring them back in, maybe a little stricter. I know this is going to be hard economically, especially on small business. It's going to be very tough, but I think we need to do it to make sure that we eradicate this and keep it eradicated until everyone can be vaccinated and is safe. So yeah, I really think we need to lock down pretty hard. I look at Britain and Europe, and only the places that have locked down an extreme amount right in the beginning are showing positive results. Everywhere else is seeing increases in cases and seeing the COVID-2 coming about now. So let's get on it. Let's get really serious about this and stop it in its tracks and go from there. Hopefully we'll have something we can come back and rebuild after if we do it now rather than waiting till it's a really big endemic problem in our society.
Todd, stricter lockdown on the way, do you think?
Tough to say. I've been saying for a very long time, I think there should have been a national strategy from the very beginning, and I get it that there would have been resistance and a terrible storyline for the Prime Minister coming out of Alberta and Saskatchewan, where they feel like they've been once again left out. But I think there's a smarter discussion that could have happened that could have led us down maybe a more expeditious path sooner rather than later. Ontario is under lockdown right now. Alberta is likely headed that way. Quebec is looking terrible once again, and will probably be heading that way if they have not already. My eyes are locked on spring break. My curiosity is we will definitely see numbers continue to rise. The problem in BC right now is we don't have a high test rate, but we have a high test positive rate. So if testing starts to go up, our numbers are going to start to go up significantly along with those. So is it spring break? Is it exactly like it was in March of 2020? Do we have a truncated mini shutdown and then the kids go away for spring break and schools are annulled for the remainder of the year? At that point, then they can migrate through something that gets us closer to the summer and closer to vaccination rates at a much higher level. I really don't know. I can't say one way or another, but if we look at the trends in other provinces in our country, if we look at trends in Europe and the UK, we are probably heading in that direction.
There you go. That's take us to about an hour. So I want to thank everyone for watching and thank Mackenzie Kerr and Todd Corrigall and Chuck Nisbett for participating once again in the panel. And we'll be back again next week.